Hi, this is Tumblr user Nacho.
Hi, this is Ziek, Tumblr user Ziek.
And this is Ziek and Nacho's Motorcity Rant Hour.
So, we've had a double whammy this week in the fact that we've had the latest episode Going Dutch and the unaired pilot, which has been uploaded to YouTube. Thank you, kind motor citizens. So we're going to be covering both of those in this podcast. But first, we have Going Dutch.
Yes, which was a truly fantastic episode, and I'm pretty sure that every single artist in the fandom was just rejoicing for this episode because it's just so good. And I mean, it's got everything you could possibly want from it. It's got zombies, it's got art,
Yes.
It's got arty zombies.
It's got Dutch's backstory, it's got...
backstory!
It was just such an excellently paced and well-written episode, and
Very
Dutch really gets a chance to shine, which is wonderful because we don't see much of him in the other episodes, but this one is just a really wonderful...
And I just love
thing.
so much that, I mean, they've made mention of Dutch being the artist and artistic before, and most cartoons would just leave it at that. But Motor City actually took us into Dutch's creative process, showed us where he does his work, how he does his work, why he does his work, and kind of tied some of the common problems that artists face in there with inspiration and people, you know, telling us what to draw and how frustrating that can be. And it was just, when I was watching it, I felt very much, you know, that this is a show, this is an episode very, very dear to the artist's heart. Like, you know, you can tell much. It's just full of all those little things that so many creative and artistic people really have to deal with.
Yes, this is one of the wonderful things that Motor City does with its characters. It's that they make them relatable, and they just pull it off so beautifully with Dutch. I mean, you can just tell that the artists are drawing from their own experience, and they're just so there with him. Like, Dutch is our collective spirit animal.
Yes.
I'm sorry for using that term, but yes.
That's had a huge boost in popularity, a very well-deserved one, because
Yes.
he hadn't really got a chance to shine for this episode. It was mostly just a supporting character, and while he did get, you know, some good moments, like arguing with Texas in Ride the Lightning and
Duke of Detroit.
Yeah, sorry, I was blanking on it. Got some good moments, but he didn't really have a chance to stand on his own and to be his own character, and he really got that in this episode. And he really had to just step up to the plate, and we got to see what he was like under pressure and in a scary situation, which was really good. We got to see some hints of, like, his family, the fact that he has a family, the fact that he's the only burner we know of who actually has both parents and a sibling.
Yeah, I mean, even Julie, we don't know what happened to her mother. We don't know anything beyond the fact that she's related to Kane. But Dutch apparently has a family, and they were supportive enough to, like, wave him goodbye when he left. And he has this, like, surly younger brother, older brother. We don't know. He looks younger to me.
And I don't know, either he was close with his dad or his dad was disappointed in him, because his dad did not look too happy when Dutch was leaving.
Yeah, well, would you be really that happy if your
Well, no, I
kid...
mean, just he looked really sad to me.
Maybe
that
it was
just me.
maybe it's the mustache thing. Kind of looks like a sad face. Anyway, so nice little segue here onto the montage sequence, which we are both going to gush about extensively because that's
So good! Just the colors and the style and the music and
yes,
the storytelling, the pacing, the backstory, Mike and Dutch, everything just
Okay, I'm gonna try and be eloquent since Nacho is currently...
No, I just gotta say, I think out of all of the sequences that have been in Motor City so far, I think this is my favorite sequence.
Yeah.
My favorite scene out of everything in Motor City so far, because it's just perfect.
Okay, now I'm gonna try and describe why it's so perfect. Okay, so we start off with Dutch saying, I'm gonna tell a story, just like these guys, and we cut to all the other graffiti that's in the central station of Detroit, which is an actual place, as Effia Motor City replugged so kindly, and does actually feature a lot of graffiti from gangs and artists and stuff. And Dutch was there creating his own little personal gallery and telling his story of how he came to Motor City. And it's such a wonderful sequence because we get to see Dutch as a little kid painting on the walls and having his tutors yell at him, and there's like a little smiley, like a little text box with a sad face in it in that first shot, and then
I know!
we see
Yes,
him
it's so
trying to
cute.
customize his own home, which is by all means his own property, but then he gets shut down by the robots and the police, which is, okay, these are very, very small moments, and they imply so much bigger things. Like, you really sense that Deluxe is quite oppressive on freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Like,
Yes.
everybody has to conform. Everybody wears the same colors. Everybody wears, like, the same style of clothes.
And get in huge trouble if you even think about defiling it with any kind of graffiti. And that's something that I really like, the different attitudes between Motor City and Deluxe regarding graffiti, because the Deluxian attitude towards graffiti is actually pretty similar to what a lot of people tend to think of graffiti, or at least used to tend to think of graffiti. You know, even now, if you ask someone if they consider graffiti art, they'll probably say no, because most people just think of it as vandalism and as defacing public property, when in reality, it's a form of expression. It's a way a lot of people choose to tell their stories and to express themselves, and I just loved the way that, you know, Motor City, you know,
handled it.
Yeah,
and it's just so beautiful. And then Dutch, of course, waves goodbye to his family and heads down to Motor City, and we see this gorgeous montage of all these things he's painted. And also in the paintings and stuff, you can see he signs it as Dutch, which makes me think that Dutch is not actually his real name, but his tag name for his artwork, which is really cool, because if that is, then it makes a lot more sense that his name is Dutch, because it's a name that he's chosen.
And it does. Dutch is just a really cool name and has a lot of really interesting meanings and connotations, so...
Yeah. We really love that sequence. Thank you, Titmouse! Just thank you!
And then at the end of it, he kind of comes out of this hibernation he's been in. He's completely lost track of time. It's been 2 days. And he comes out and he finds that Motor City's completely gone to pot, and there's this whole zombie apocalypse going on. And let's talk about the zombies.
Yes.
Wow, it's not too often that you get a really good zombie episode in a kid's show, and this was a really good zombie episode.
Oh, this is like a really brilliant interpretation of like typical zombie story, and it's such...
not just sickness. It's a virus, but it's actually a computer virus. It's kind of a play on words there. It's a sickness, it's a virus, but it's not organic. It's mechanical. It's, you know, it's
invented.
Technology.
And that's such
really good, really cool, and really appropriate for this show. Really good take on it. And I love a detail that I noticed. I was looking at the zombie designs, and I noticed that they have these lines all over their faces, around their eyes, on their necks, around their mouths. And, you know, at first glance, you think they're just like veins.
Or decay or whatever. But no, they're actually like circuitry.
They're a pattern that resembles circuitry. And I mean, that is just the coolest thing.
Yes, and I love how their eyes will bulge out and light up green and yellow, and it looks really surreal and mechanical and gross, and it's wonderful.
Yes, and something I noticed too, I noticed it most when Dutch was fighting Jacob, but I didn't even really think about it the first time I watched the episode, but his voice sounded kind of synthesized.
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that now until you mentioned it. Wow, that's yes.
I just realized that. Like, I mean, I had kind of been thinking about it, but it didn't really click until just now. But their voices kind of get
auto-tuned,
synthesized a little bit. And it's just, I mean, they're not just zombies, they're cyber zombies.
How cool can you get?
I don't think they could have been cooler if they shot lasers out of their eyes. I mean, wow.
That's debatable.
Well,
Texas would.
But,
okay, I want to say that not only was the zombie thing handled really well, in meta, it's also, like, handled kind of hilariously to me, because at one point Mike is like, I should have seen this coming, and Dutch is like, what? No, you should have seen that Kane was going to release a crazy virus, and of course, the fandom knows that we've been, like, speaking about this for a while, and there were a few predictions for it, and
but,
it's hilarious that Mike blames himself.
Dutch and Mike, I love that they got so much interaction, because Mike and Dutch in the other episodes haven't really talked much. We haven't really gotten to see what kind of dynamic they have. We know what kind of dynamic Mike has with all the other characters, and we know what kind of dynamic Dutch has with most of the other characters, but we never really got to see them one-on-one, and it was just really nice to see them like that, and also the fact that we have, you know, confirmation now that Dutch was the last burner to join, kind of explains why he's a little distant from the rest of the group, because the rest of them are just so tight, like this. You can't see meshing my fingers together, they're just so tight together, and Dutch is just kind of off by himself, working on his cars, talking to Roth, and, you know, drawing his art.
Yeah, I really love the fact that Mike is the one that met Dutch first and that pulled him into the gang, which is great because it kind of confirms, like, my general feeling that Mike is very much the center of the burners, characters, and that
Oh,
he pulls everyone
he's
into
definitely
him.
the center.
And I love the fact that just Dutch has obviously so much affection for his friends, even though, like, they get on his nerves sometimes.
The way he drew them, going back to that sequence, and we should stop talking about the sequence, but going back to the sequence, just the way he drew them, they're all smiling, and they all look so happy in his pictures, and it's just, you know, he really loves them, and it's so great. It's just, I just love these characters and how much they love each other, because you don't get that in, you know, action-y kids cartoons. Everyone's too busy fighting the bad guys to really spare any time for each other and for, you know, just loving each other.
Yes, and I think this is what makes Motor City work so well as an action thing, because we're actually invested in the characters. And
they're invested in each other.
Yes, the fact that they care, and the fact that they have stories that we can relate to, and that they're so well written and human, just makes us want to root for them even more. And that's what really gets the fans involved with the show, and that's why so many of us are just so in love with this show. Apart from the art, apart from the big explosions and stuff, it's just because it's so well written, and
it is
we
so
can
well
just...
written. It is really one of the most well written pieces of fiction. I mean, not even shows. It's just one of the most well written pieces of fiction I've ever seen. I gotta say that. It's just because it's so surreal and at the same time so real. It's got all of these ridiculous things like robots and souped up muscle cars and lasers and, you know, evil billionaires, and then it's got these characters who, despite living 150 years into the future and despite having these amazing cars and, you know, living in this giant jungle gym of dystopian Detroit, they are so great. They are just teenagers, and they act like teenagers, and they think like teenagers, and they feel like teenagers, and the adults feel like adults, and it's so good. It's so good. I'm sorry.
It's perfectly okay. It's perfectly okay.
Totally off topic, but it's just so well written, and I really can't think of many other things that were written so well as to completely immerse you in this world after only 8 installments.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only been 8 episodes, and yet I feel like I know so much about these characters, and I'm so connected to these characters. I wasn't connected to these characters after, I don't know, let me think of an example, like Avatar The Last Airbender. I'm not gonna even touch Korra right now, but just the original Avatar The Last Airbender. It was a very good show. I still love it so much. It's such a good show. But it took me like half a season to really feel like I knew the characters and to really start caring about them. You know, it actually, I don't think it was even till near the end of the first season of Avatar that I really felt like Sokka was more than just comic relief, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas in Motor City, it's like, you can easily pick out which characters are comic relief. Texas is comic relief, that's obvious.
But
and yet, he's more than just comic relief. You know, he's more than just the dumb muscle.
Yeah.
So, I think we've just about covered everything for Going Dutch. But do we want to talk about Roth a little bit?
Yes, we do want to talk about Roth a little bit, because Roth gets a beautiful character, like, beautiful moments for Roth, who doesn't even have a voice, really. He just sort of
He just squeaks and buzzes. He's like,
Wally.
He's like Wally, yes.
But even less talkative. And it's just so adorable seeing Dutch interact with Roth, and you really get the sense that Roth is like Dutch's pet and Dutch's like friend and sidekick, and it's so sweet, his little supporting of Dutch, and he gets hero moments and a villain moment, and the virus affecting him was just like the coolest, almost boss battle I've ever seen.
God, it was so terrifying. It was like,
whoa!
Whoa!
How did that happen?
This is not an ordinary zombie thing. I mean, that's where they took it up to 11.
Yeah.
And that's going back to the zombie virus. That's where the genius of it is, because in being a computer virus, it actually has the potential to affect
computer AIs.
Robots and AIs, and considering how much Motor City relies on that, you know, that was a really smart move on Kane's part.
Yeah, I mean, that would actually leave them almost completely defenseless if it took out the main computer grid, which it kind of did because it took out Chuck, who seems to be running.
It took out all of the people who could possibly
run a computer.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry there was like a break.
I think we should wrap up the zombie part of this podcast and move on to the pilot part.
Which I'm going to split into a separate one because we've gone over our 20-minute time limit for each individual cast. So, for those of you...
We like to talk about this stuff. We talk a lot.
This isn't even counting, like, the 20 minutes before that we spent just talking about.
Yes! You guys have no idea how much talking goes into these podcasts, really.
One day we will...
If we ever do a live stream, you guys are just going to get so bored.
Yep. Anyway, so, for those of you who haven't seen the pilot yet, I guess you'll not be listening to the next one because it's going to be full of spoilers, unless of course you want to.
Delicious, amazing spoilers.
Including our very own People of Motorcity's next tidbit, which is kind of related to the pilot.
Into the pilot.
Yes.
Into one specific scene that made me pretty much explode when I watched it. I was so happy.
Wow, really?
Yes, I just...
Okay.
Sorry, I'll send it to the next cast. You can edit that out.
So, live fast, live free, and tune in next time.
For another exciting episode of Ziek and Nacho's Motorcity Rant Hour.
Bye!
Bye!